Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, my name is Elsa Blahumaira.
And I'm Nada Jusli. Here we want to explain about four methods translate Putri.
So, of course, before we're going to the method, we have to know first the definition of poetry and also translation. So, in here, maybe you already know what is translation, but we will explain it again. Translation is the form of changing, referring, producing, and replacing text, words, phrases, and sentences from the source language to the target language. And poetry itself is one of the literally works of beauty, and the language used in poetry, of course, has an aesthetic meaning. Poetry also generally written, read, and listened to more intensively than ordinary language. As a translator, to translate poetry, we have to pay attention to the rhyme, typography, construct word, figure of speech, diction, theme, feeling, tone, and of course the atmosphere of the poetry that we want to translate. And we're going into the first translation method of poetry. So in here, there is phonemic translation. So phonemic translation method is a method of transferring meaning from the original poem to the target poem by recreating the sound from the language source to the language target. And this method emphasizes the sound in language target, but the translation results are stiff, and the meaning of the original poetry often disappear. And of course, the consequence of phonemic translation do cause the meaning to be less accurate or blurry. So in here there is an example. You can see it in the box. Let's take a look into the box behind the text. So in a pieces of poetry in the box, the sound of D at the end of the words is translated with the sound of A in the source language. Hound and wound translate to be kuda and luka. So in here, the pressure of the sounds is still the same, but only change from the consonant to vowels, from D to A. So the consequence of this translation sometimes make the meaning of the real poetry sound less accurate. We can see in the word of hound, which means dog, is translated into horse in the target language. So the word horse actually can still be used because it does not present a metaphor for the poetry. That's why hound in here replaced to be kuda, not anjing. Now we're continuing into the second method. So in here there is a literal translation, and this method is applied to translate the poetry text word by word from the source language into the target language. So it's mean word by word. Like we have to know the risk of this translation too. It can remove the meaning and also the structure of phrases and sentences that stray away from the original structure. And literal translation result in meaning, phrase, structure, and sentences deviating from the original structure. Now let's see the box behind the text. There is the example. See the example in the text source box. So in here there is there is the poetic phrase of summer day. In English, summer day is a very beautiful time when the sun shines bright and the flowers bloom. But if we imagine as an Indonesian, summer will of course have a different image because the season in here will make us imagine a very blazing hot situation and dry rice field and also dry rivers. This will make us imagine something bad. So the image of the beauty of the summer day will against the summer in Indonesia, and of course it's very contradictory. So, literal translation is not always good because it can change the real meaning from the original poetry. And what we have to know is, given the very important imagery in the whole poem is very important. Of course, this is to make the original poems not changing when we're translated into the target language. And now let's going into the next method that will be explained by Nadia. For Nadia, time and place is yours.
So the next is a rhyme translation. Rhyme translation is the translation of poetry that emphasizes the original quest or mission into the rhyme, the rhythm of the translate poetry. The translation result will fit physically but tend to be meaningless. For example, in research text, the tulips blaze sparkling. In the target text, tulip memancarkan berkilau. And second, in search tag, in the embrace of green feeling. In target text, dalam pelukan perasaan hijau. The result of the translation of this fragment of the poetry physically have the same poetry. In the original poetry, it rhymes with G, while in the target poetry, rhymes UU. The translation results in a beautiful style. In this example, the meaning can be conveyed well, but in the same case, the meaning of the poetry is inappropriate. Next, metric translation. Metric translation is a translation that emphasizes the production of the same metric or rhythm between the original poetry and the target text poetry. Each language has its own emphasis and spelling system. Therefore, this method will produce a translation result that are not suitable the meaning and structure. For example, in research text, "Oh, my love is like a red rose." In target text, "Oh, cintaku mawar merahku." That is nearly spring in June. In target text, bersemi di awal Juni. "Oh, my love is like the melody." In target text, "Oh, cintaku bagai melodi." That is sweetly played in tune. In target text, mengalun dengan indah. In the poetry translation above, the translation focus on the poetry method. The emphasis between original poetry and translation is the same. Based on the above example, the first stanza in emphasis 9 and the target poem also has emphasis 9, which is perfectly applied to the next stanza. And thanks for attention, and thanks to for watching our video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.